Hi all, I hope you're doing well and welcome to this Cine Circle talk where we'll be discussing indie film marketing. Now, first things first, it would be fantastic if you guys could give me a quick thumbs up in the comments if you can hear me okay, if you can see me okay, and just to make sure that everything is working. Now, throughout this talk, please feel free to make it as interactive as you'd like. Please feel free to network with each other in the chat. And please feel free to ask any questions that you might have as well. We'll be monitoring the chat and we'll be making sure to answer as many of your questions as we can. I'm glad to hear that Paul, Alan, you guys can hear me okay. So as you all know, today we will be discussing indie film marketing. And for that, I have brought two guests here today who I think will really help elevate this discussion and talk about the way that they've marketed their own films, the lessons that they've learned, the things that worked, the things that didn't, which can help you all on your journey in marketing your films. Because we all know that these days, whether you go with a traditional distributor or whether you decide to self-distribute your film through Film Hub or Vimeo, you will need to do your own marketing. In indie film, you will always have to do some of your own marketing or else the film simply will not perform. And to give you a very quick backstory of how I met Patrick and Deborah, who I will introduce in just a moment. I run this film and film distribution mastery program at the beginning of this year. And I reached out to some of the people who attended and I wanted to learn more about their projects. So they told me about this film that they made that wasn't even released at that point called Shaken and Stirred, which was a documentary about flair bartending. So I went to one of my friends here in London and they are based in Las Vegas in the US on the other side of the world. And I asked him, oh yeah, you know what? I just told him that I'm, potentially going to help distribute this film called Shaken and Stirred. And he said, oh, I know that film. I've heard all about it. And that was the moment that I knew these guys are doing something right. On the other side of the world, one of my friends already knew about this indie documentary that was not even released yet. So in today's talk, we're going to discuss exactly how they did that, how they built this community around the project, and how they build such awareness around the project, which has also already gotten them quite a lot of success in their self-distribution journey so far. So without further ado, I'd love to invite Patrick and Deborah to the stage. Welcome. So, I gave a little bit of introduction about you guys, but it'd be fantastic if you guys could introduce yourselves and perhaps give us a little bit of insight into your own personal career histories and stories.
I'll try and do the short version. I've basically been playing with pixels my whole life. Got my first camera in like 1980-ish and started editing in like 82 with like 2 VCRs and built my first website in 88. And I was there for like the beginning of nonlinear editing and recording studios and stuff in my teens. And so I just always had this really strong foundation of technical skill sets. And also I've also always been interested in humanity and sociology and psychology and all that. So I'm fascinated with the human condition and people. And so for me, becoming a writer-director was just a really natural kind of fit of all of those interests and skills. And that's a really short version.
Hey, I'm Patrick. I come from a background in academia and then editorial photography. So I sort of came late to the filmmaking, but I started producing other people's films, so short films, and I found out I really loved it. It's like putting together a puzzle, as many people out there know. And then, I met Deb through co-producing one of her short films.
Well, we met through film school.
We met through film school, and then, I produced hers. Sent Hollywood My Love, and then we've just been working ever since. 2 features now, and prepping for our 3rd now.
And that was 10 years ago when we met through film school, and we've been kind of working exclusively together since. Patrick's producer and writer-director. We kind of divide our labor by Patrick is logistics, and I'm shapes and colors.
Great, great. And your two feature films, I think it's safe to say that the lessons that you learned from the first one very much shaped your next film. Can you tell us a little bit about the first film that you guys created? A little bit about what it was about, but also about the marketing of it, what you guys felt that worked, what didn't work, and what were the main lessons that you learned from that project?
Sure. So I just want to preface this with the two movies that we've made together, we've made in the last 4 years. So a lot of our experience is super relevant and current. And, we've only been making movies since the shutdown. So, but our first movie, independent movie, it's available on Amazon. It's called Move Me No Mountain. And it is a drama, about homelessness with a soft cast, which means no one famous, which is a nice way of saying that. It's a very, very hard sell. And sometimes as filmmakers and as artists, we want to make what's in our heart, but we also have to balance that with a fiduciary responsibility we have to investors to mitigate risk as much as possible so that we create a return on the investment. Now, one of the hardest things with making any movie is connecting to an audience. And because we were starting with such a hard sell with Move Me No Mountain, it was very hard for us to get traction. I mean, we got distribution. We went to the American film market and we got a bunch of distribution offers. And we picked an independent distributor, and the movie is out there, and it's not doing the numbers that we wished it would, and I think mostly that's because it's just so hard to connect with an audience. So we approached the second movie very differently.
Yeah,
Okay.
putting Move Me No Mountain, even though it's a micro budget film, it was very ambitious. 35 cast, huge crew, at least 35, 40 locations around town. I mean, it was very ambitious. So. Making it, it was our first feature film, and I would do things differently now, which when we would, doing our second film, it was like, okay, we need to get people who are known in the industry we want to profile in our documentary, because I would do things differently on my first movie. We had the chance to hire a named actor, but we would have to have gone by SAG protocols, Screen Actors Guild, and that would have, during the pandemic, the COVID protocols would have added maybe a third to our budget. But I think that would have been worth it, just because we would have had in the supporting role, a major supporting role, a person that people know. Everyone, if I said, I'm not going to say the name out now, but everyone would know this name, particularly female, in the female reality space community. So definitely when we started this film, it was like, okay, what did we learn from our first film that didn't work, that we're going to apply now to our second film?
And there are many opportunities to mitigate risk at every step of the way, and that even starts with genre, right? So drama is like a very, very, very hard sell. When we went to the convention NAPI in Miami a couple of years ago, and we registered, you can do the drop down select thingy to select the genre that you're representing, and drama wasn't even a genre there for that convention of
TV executives,
of TV exec buyers.
Interesting. In your own words, because I think everyone's got different theories about this, but in your own words, why are dramas so hard to market? Why was your particular drama you felt so hard to market and to connect with an audience?
Well, first of all, it's a difficult subject matter because homelessness is a tough subject matter when you look at it for real.
It was about a homeless woman in Las Vegas.
And then the next thing is it had a soft cast. You need recognizable names if you're going to do drama. And also drama doesn't necessarily translate. It's like comedy doesn't necessarily translate, whereas action and horror, you can have that in any language, and what's scary in one place is scary in another. But that's not necessarily true of dramatic, fiction or comedy. So there are certain genres come and go. Like westerns have been very, trodden down, but recently they're trying to make a little bit of a resurgence. But so there are these trends, but consistently, of the genre films, action and horror and sci-fi are the ones to go to. So even just by picking the genre, you're essentially handicapping yourself at the first hurdle.
That's interesting. And I think a lot of your learning seem to have been about the film itself and how you can create a film that's essentially more marketable, which I do think is the most important thing that any filmmaker can do, is to create a film that's actually marketable in order to make a profitable film. Because if you create a film that inherently is really, really difficult to market, you're going to have an uphill battle that you're probably going to lose. And we'll talk about how to create that marketable film. I also, I want to point out that, a lot of people, when they listen to this, they think, well, okay, in that case, I have to make a horror film because it seems that and sci-fi films are pretty much the only ones that are considered marketable. And I actually think this is why this discussion is going to be so interesting, because documentary films inherently are really difficult to market. So it's interesting to see that there are actually documentaries, there are potentially even drama films that are easier to market than others. But
there will always be outliers, and you can't base a business plan on an outlier. There will always be the paranormal activities and the Blair Witch projects and the 30,000 turned into millions, whatever. But that's not, those are just, those are you just can't set course on that. But coming back to connecting to an audience, that's what greenlit ourselves for our documentary Shaken and Stirred. Basically, we had two production partners who had an email list of 13,000 emails of bartenders. And that was enough for us at that point to greenlight ourselves, give us a permission ourselves to make this movie, because we knew from day one that we had a grassroots audience that we could connect with. And it's so important to build your community and your audience from day one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what I really want to discuss here today, is how you guys did that. So once again, Shaken and Stirred, a documentary film about flair bartending. Can you give us a little bit more insight into the final product, a little bit more just about what exactly it's about, what happens in the documentary, who's in it, and so on?
Sure. So Shaken and Stirred is the world's first featured documentary about the underground world of competitive flair bartending, where they flip bottles around like the movie Cocktail with Tom Cruise. And in fact, the guy that taught Tom Cruise is in the movie because it was the influence of that movie that created a global movement of flair bartending around the world. Some, 30 years ago now?
Yeah, something like that.
Oh my gosh, so long ago.
Almost 40.
Almost 40. So it created this spark of imagination of flair bartending around the world. And it was interesting because at its height 20 years ago, when there was like $100,000 for competitions for flair bartenders and stuff, it never crossed over to the X Games, because you can't market a bottle of Smirnoff vodka to a 5-year-old in the same way that you can with a skateboard. So it always stayed like this underground sport. And it has, it blew up in popularity, then it declined a little, and now it's kind of coming back again. And so the movie really looks at the past, present, and speculates on the future of the sport and the art, and discusses it from all kinds of angles. If it is a sport or is it an art? What is it? It's a boys' club. Where do women play in this? What is the state of competitions now? And it's all intercut with interviews of some of the world's best bartenders. Our poster boy, Christian Delpeche, is like 18 times world champion. Is that 19 times world champion. He's like the Tiger Woods of the sport. So there's all these people talking about it as three of the world's best bartenders prep and get ready for a big competition in Florida. So we followed them for a couple months, and then it kind of intercuts with all these interviews to look at it holistically as a sport and art as a whole.
Interesting. And so what's so interesting, and what I was bringing up beforehand, was that when you look at this project from far away without knowing your story, it doesn't seem like the type of project that would actually be highly marketable, in the sense that you might think, well, no one's done this before. Perhaps there's a reason why no one made a documentary about this before. It's not a sport that's globally really well known, like, football and, and basketball and so on. And it's a documentary, and documentaries tend to be harder to market than dramas. So it's so interesting to hear the story of why you actually created this film. So you started off with this email list. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? So you had two production partners who had this email list of bartenders, and where did you go from that? How did you utilize that list at the
But
start?
the first thing we had to do was sanitize it. Just because someone has a list doesn't mean all of those emails still exist. So that 13,000 then got chopped down to about 6,000. But that was still enough for us to say, hey, even if it's 1,000 people that we reach, that's a 1,000-person head start on a project that's it's a big mistake to go out and film and then worry about how we're going to market this, and to that point we actually split our budgets in three, a third for production, a third for post, and a third for marketing, because that's another big mistake independent filmmakers do. They'll make this wonderful film and then there's no money in the kitty to even go to a festival, let alone enter a festival, right? So but what we did is the bartenders that we chose to be in this movie all have massive followings. They all have social medias with tons of followers. So we leaned into that. We thought, well, if we make this documentary about all these really interesting people that have really big followings, we can capitalize that on somehow. But Pat, maybe you want to talk about, like, from day one, how we created the social accounts and the kind of posting we do. Pat does a lot of our social media posting and stuff, which is like a big part of it to engage people. And I know, like, no filmmaker wants to. I know what it's like. Every filmmaker's like, I don't want to do marketing, right? And honestly, neither do we, but we want people to see our film. So it's part of it at this level. And it's one of those things you just have to accept.
Sure, we set up our socials. Like when we decided to do the movie, that's when we set up our socials, even before we started filming. On Instagram, Facebook, we're on X too, but we don't get much traction on X. But for Instagram and Facebook, we started posting right from the start. This person is in our film once the person agreed to be in our film. And if they had a huge following, hopefully they collaborated with us, and that helped our numbers grow and just get the word out that we're doing a film on this person and get it out to their followers. And that really helped us start building an audience for it. And flair bartending, it's not my world. It's Deb's world before filmmaking. So I didn't know anything about it, but I found out that there's actually a huge community of flair bartenders around the world. Latin America, Eastern Europe, India, and our followers were coming from all these different regions of the world. And they keep on posting to our stuff too, because showing, hey, look what we're doing here in Nepal. Look what we're doing here in Peru. So when I realized there's a huge audience, core audience, and I go, okay, let's make this movie. We can market to them first, and then from them, go to the general public.
Well, I also think you did something really clever that I don't think we've ever really addressed before, which is, our social media that Pat runs. It wasn't just like, hey, look at us, look at us, look at us. More often than not, Pat is reposting other flair bartenders' wins, competitions, travels. And so it's just like, it's additive to the community as opposed to, drawing attention away from it.
Yeah, we had a small budget. It's still a micro budget film, our documentary. But I figured there's several million hospitality workers around the world. A lot of people have done bartending once or twice in their life, even if they're not doing it right now. So I thought we had a market for it, and we're getting good responses.
And then the other key thing that we did is can we talk about our affiliate program?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we gearing up for the launch, we realized that we had this amazing cast of characters in the movie with followings, and we were like, how can we empower them to promote the movie? And so basically what we did is, because we're self-distributing and we use Vimeo OTT, which was surprisingly easy to set up, even though there's not a lot of information out there about it. It was pretty easy to set up, and it allowed us to create multiple portals. So what we were able to do is, as you see the poster back here, like for everyone in the movie, we made like their own individual posters and postcards with a QR code on the bottom. And then when someone scans that QR code, it goes to each of these individuals' Vimeo portal kind of thing. So that when someone rents or buys the movie, then these individual bartenders get a small commission. And the cool thing about that is we had bartending schools in London, Paris,
Italy,
South Africa, Italy, pumping these out. We had Bar Products, which is one of the largest companies in the world for bar products. They basically had 17,000 outgoing packages. 70,000 outgoing packages last year they sold, and they're putting these postcards in every of their packages. So it was enough to kind of get a global spread and a global buzz in the community. And we always knew we wanted to start with the community and then build outwards.
Yeah, and I think you guys just highlighted what I think is the biggest mistake that indie filmmakers make with marketing and what to do instead. And I think that biggest mistake is having an audience that's too big and too general, right? Where you're like, I'm making a horror film, therefore my audience is horror film fans, right? Or, I'm putting my film on Amazon, so my audience is people who watch films on Amazon. And that's genuinely, I hear so many filmmakers say, well, my film is really for everyone because it's got this and this and that. And that means it's not really for anybody. Because unless you have a huge budget, and unless you're making, the next Marvel film that really does try to cater to nearly every single audience, and you've got the budget to support that, you're going to have to start with a grassroots audience. And one thing that I very strongly believe is that if you have an audience of 50 or 100 people who are all going to buy or rent your film on Amazon, who are going to leave an IMDb review, who are going to leave an Amazon review, who are going to share your posts, those 100 people are worth infinitely more than 100,000 people who might click on your link somewhere, go to, Tubi to watch your film, and then drop off after 2 minutes because it's not for them. So I think it's always so important for filmmakers to start with a really, really, really small audience that's actually highly targeted, the people who really want to watch your film. And that's what you guys seem to do over here just so brilliantly, which is you didn't start with a massive audience. You started with an audience of people who will really want to see your film happen, because also it's in the best interest of the flair bartenders, right? Those bartenders, they want people to know that, hey, I've got this job that's actually really cool. And one of the ways to do that is for documentaries to start coming out about this profession, about the competitions, which will, bring more eyes on them, bring more conversations about them, and so on, which I think is just so amazing.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, because we know of other movies on flair bartending that are coming out now, other documentaries that are being shot. And there was some worry that they might come out before us. But no, we were on a tight schedule, so I figured we would come out first. But also, more importantly, I think anything that creates a climate for flair bartending, a market for flair bartending, will benefit everyone. Mm-hmm. Because we're so niche now, anything that creates a larger audience will benefit everyone in this space. One of
the interesting things through this experience is so many people that watch the movie, they say, "Oh, I had no idea about that world," and that's what's exciting for us as artists, and why we decided to make the movie in the first place, to shine a light on this world that people don't know about. Also, once upon a time, someone once asked me, "What do you like to film?" And I'm like, anything that moves. And there's a lot of movement in this. So it's one of the reviews on IMDb said visual ASMR. And I like that because it's a feel-good movie. It's pretty inclusive, and it's not so niche that it's like, I think we think that maybe this other flair movie that's in development by some other people might be very niche, where it's like, if you're a flair bartender can you get into it, whereas this is a bit more broad appeal because it goes through the history and everything and takes a holistic view.
Yeah, that's so interesting. There's a couple of things that I want to bring out over here. I mean, the first one is what you guys also did brilliantly is you created a film that fills a gap in the market. You created the first ever documentary film about flair bartending, which is an obvious gap in the market. There are people who want to see that documentary. It doesn't exist. You guys have a monopoly on that right now until that next documentary comes out, which is a huge advantage and is the exact opposite of making a drama, where nearly every single filmmaker at some point in their early careers will make a drama film, whether it's as a student or, early on. And because of that, there are so many dramas for a too small of an audience Therefore, you never really get, enough of an audience. Whereas here, you guys really fill that gap in the market, which is incredible.
Thanks.
You guys also, one thing that you mentioned, which I just want to, bring attention to once again, in terms of social media, because we always get a lot of questions about how can I grow my social media following and presence? And it's actually becoming really, really difficult because there are more and more creators on these platforms that are all inherently a little bit selfish. They all want to promote their own social media profiles. And actually, I found one of the easiest and fastest way to, for example, grow on Instagram is create 5 to 10 stories a day where you are sharing other people's posts, because they are, 80-90% likely to repost, reshare your story on their story, which will then bring their traffic to your page. And if you do that 5 or 10 times a day, you will get so much traffic to your Instagram page, and you will get from that so many followers that's literally one of the best strategies to grow. And on top of that, all of those people who you reshare their stories, the algorithm will now think that your accounts are in some way connected or that you know each other. So we'll start showing your posts to them. So it will also increase your reach by a lot. And it just shows that when it comes to marketing, sometimes it really helps to help others. And that will actually be the thing that will help you grow. You also mentioned, this is now the question, you mentioned you had a marketing budget. Can you guys tell us a little bit about what you spend the marketing budget on, or what you're still planning to spend it on? I mean, was it ads? Was it on film festival entries? What was the plan, and then what actually happened as well?
Well, just before we get into the nuts and bolts of that, the first thing we did with a large chunk of our marketing budget was a pretty fancy premiere. And we had like a red carpet. We rented a theater, this beautiful theater in Las Vegas. Shout out to the Beverly. It's got one screen, and it was built for premieres and special screenings. It's very cool. And so we rented that place, and we did a red carpet event. But what was different is there's an annual event in Las Vegas where we're based, called the Nightclub and Bar Convention. And it's Expo, and it's a huge event, right? And bartenders from all over the world fly in for this event. And so we had our premiere on the last night of the event, or the middle night of the event, or something like that. So
the second day of the event.
So all the big bartenders from around the world were in town. Yet we only had a capacity of I think 200 or 100, 220 or something like that. So we only had we didn't sell tickets. It was like, if you want to come, we invited people, right? And so we invited a lot of bartenders, local press, yada yada. But those 200 tickets were gone, and so we created this thing of scarcity right away. And then on our red carpet, we did like a 20-foot long step and repeat. And on the red carpet, we had multiple press outlets organized. So we had like a live stream of the red carpet. We had another press thingy. We had another. So we had like literally 4 press outlets. As people go down the red carpet, they feel like, Hollywood. And there were so many assets created from that, and a scarcity about it as well, because all these bartenders wanted to come that couldn't come. And then we got Patron and Finest Call to pay for the event as well. So it was a super big win. And they didn't. I think they paid for like 80% of it, and so a chunk of our money went in. It was still an expensive event. I think the event cost us somewhere in like region of 10 or 20, 15. So super expensive event for us to do, but that was a big chunk of our initial, in real life marketing.
Sure. And I'm sure that everyone is also thinking, how can I get a sponsor like that for my event? Can you tell me a little bit about that conversation that you had with that brand? How did you first reach out to them? What did you pitch, and so on?
Okay, this is an important point, because this bartending and flair bartending used to be Dev's world, and our 2 producing partners, Dean Cerneals and Rob Husted, they're still in the bartending world. So they have all these connections with these labels, these liquor labels. And Rob, he organizes his own flair competitions too, these amazing competitions. So we already had that connection because of our subject matter and who our producing partners were, and honestly, who some of our investors were too, who we pitched to give money for our film. So we had the connections with Patron Tequila and with Finest Call, which is produces like I think one of the largest mixes, alcoholic mixes and drink mixes, or non-alcoholic, just drinks, drink mixes in the U.S.
But what was interesting is because these people that we're doing the documentary about are so entrenched in this industry, it was easy for them to introduce us to other people in the industry, and that's how these connections happened. As for the conversation, like, hi Patron, Deborah Richardson, a filmmaker, give me money. It wasn't like that. It was more like, what are your marketing? Hey Patron, what are your marketing goals? How can we support you? And they're like, well, one thing that's really important to us currently is to get bartenders out of bars and treat the best bartenders in the city to an event or an experience. That was Patron's agenda. So we're like, have we got the experience for you? We've got a red carpet premiere. So it's interesting because from that I learned, it's so important to find out what a corporation, business, brand, what it is they're looking for, and see if you can fit yourself into that and provide that somehow.
And what was it that they were looking for?
To provide bartenders, because one top bartender in a city to Patron is worth a couple $100,000 in sales, right? So they have no problem splashing out $2,000, $3,000 to make that bartender's night epic once a year, right? So their thing was, let's take bartenders out of their normal environments and expose them to an experience that they wouldn't have otherwise. And that was the red carpet premiere. So it's very important to find out what it is that the brand or whatever is looking for, and see if you can kind of somehow facilitate that.
Yeah, I think what's so important for indie filmmakers to understand is this concept of figuring out, putting yourself in the shoes of the person that you are asking something from.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that you're not begging and just asking, you're offering value instead. Because if you know what they want, suddenly you can turn something which for most indie filmmakers seems like, oh God, I need to get the sponsor to try and, give me money. But you're not asking them to give you money. If you understand what they want, you're asking them to create an investment that will make them hundreds of thousands of dollars, right?
Yeah.
Which is so much more appealing. But I think indie filmmakers, a lot of the times, the ones that I speak to can't quite make that mindset shift. I've had this talk with a producer called Aaron B. Kuntz, who did one of the highest grossing horror Kickstarter campaigns of all time. He raised about 1.6 million on Kickstarter. And his huge takeaway was, rather than just asking people to support the crowdfunding campaign, he offered rewards that were actually really valuable to filmmakers, right? He told them, you will be part of this private Discord community where we will give you daily updates on how we produce and raise the rest of the finances for this film and so on. And that was something that's every single filmmaker saw that and they're like, yeah, I'll give $20 for that. I want to be part of that for the next 3 years to see exactly how they do. So it's that idea of changing the mindset from, I want to take something from you, to I am offering you something in exchange for something else.
And funnily enough, like writers, right? A lot of artists are writers as well. And you have to be very empathic to be a writer. So it's a skill that translates, right?
Yeah. And on that note, I know that a lot of filmmakers get frustrated when they hear, oh, like, how did you do that? Well, I knew someone who introduced me to, or well, I knew someone in that company. And it feels like this world of filmmaking is all about connections. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of filmmakers feel that that's not fair if they don't have any connections. But rather than thinking it's not fair, just figuring out, well, how can you make your own connections in the world, right? Yeah. Because most of us start off without having any connections. You just build them along the way. Yeah. And I'm wondering, in your, in the experience that you guys have had so far, in your career, do you have any of main tips or tricks for building valuable connections, especially with, gatekeepers, perhaps investors, high net worth individuals, people of influence in any way? How someone who's, listening to this, who, might have just entered the industry or might be young, just finished university, and they have no connections, they come from a low income, background. how can they start building those connections from scratch?
Well, if you're coming from film school, that's where your connections start, because your film school buddies of today are your crew of tomorrow. And you meet the same people on the way up as you do on the way down. So you might be at film school today with someone who knows nothing, right? And in 30 years from now, they could be a studio head. And that's how life works. So I think the key is organic relationships. Be kind, be nice. There is no destination. The journey is the destination. And I think one tip that I have for, like, a lot of people say, well, I know this person, but I don't know when to contact them, or how often should I contact them, or how do I foster an organic relationship? And it's if you're thinking that hard about it, it's obviously not organic. But the easy hack to that is when someone crosses your mind, reach out to them. And I do that all the time. Like, I'll have some people that are really, really high up in the industry that I really have no business texting. But every now and then I'll be like, oh my gosh, you were in my dream last night. You were mowing the lawn on top of a skyscraper. And they're like, oh, that's so funny. It's great to hear from you, Deb. How are you? But it wasn't like made up. It was like, that's what happened. Or like, I see a movie that reminds me of that connection to that person. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just saw this movie. I was thinking. So reach out organically. When you think of people, it's really nice to let them know, because people love that.
And the number one way to reach out organically, I think, is let your work speak for yourself and use your work to reach out to people. We didn't start just making features. We started with a couple of short films. And each short film, we hired people, we talked to people, we won festivals, we met people through the festivals, and that led to more connections to make our first feature. And that led to, once we got the money for that and paid these people to work on our film, that led to more connections, and that led to...
It just snowballs. It snowballs. And yeah, I mean, all those... I did like 10 shorts over the last 11 years.
Yeah, let your work be your connection, make your connections.
And I quickly got a reputation as someone that always finished every project that I did. And that made a big difference in the really small kind of like indie, just getting started short.
Because that's unusual.
Because that's unusual. A lot of people, will put in time and effort to a project, and then they'll be disappointed to find out a year later that it's still not done and the person's moved on or whatever. And that's not fair to the people that you're asking to put in their time and effort, especially at that level. So got a reputation as someone that always finished stuff. I won 4 Emmys when I was in film school 10 years ago, which helped a lot. I mean, it helped and it didn't help, right? I won 4 Emmys in film school. I dropped out of film school. I was like, I know everything. I went to Hollywood, knocked on the door. There was no answer. I was like, but I have 4 Emmys. And they were like, no one cares. And so I spent the next 10 years with Patrick, really grinding out and learning my craft. And it all snowballs. Like recently, our next project, the screenplay for our next project, which is a horror called Scissormouth, the screenplay recently took second place at Slamdance, which is a huge festival. And, that's just like another step forward, that now when we reach out to people, we're like, to discuss that project, we're like, and by the way, the screenplay took second place last week at Slamdance. And they're like, oh, I can't wait to read it. And it, so it's just like little wins, little victories. But I will say this about wins, okay? People see our wins all the time, right? Because we promote the wins. No one sees the losses. No one sees the no's.
No.
And there are so many more no's. Like, for example, did I even tell you that we didn't make the Key West Festival?
Well, I knew it when you didn't tell me.
but the no's we don't even usually share, because there's so many. For every 10 things we shoot for, we get 1 or 2.
Yeah, we were dying to go into the Key West Film Festival, because what's a better place for a bartending movie than a bar city like Key West? So it was a huge disappointment, but we have these no's, and you just you gotta take it on the chin and go on.
Yeah, learn to eat no's for breakfast, and you'll never go hungry in movies.
Yeah, I find that there's 2 things that I want to share. The first one is this concept of collecting no's. Actually trying to deliberately collect no's throughout your day. Because if you set yourself this task that in this next week, each day I am going to collect 1 no. I'm going to ask for something that's so ridiculous that I know people are going to say no to me. Such as next time I'm at Starbucks, I'm going to say, could I get this coffee for free? Knowing that the person is going to say no. And I'm going to try and collect a no. And if you do that, you will realize after a couple of weeks how many of those times that you thought you were going to get a no, you actually got a yes. even when what you were asking for you thought was going to be unreasonable or something. Because, for example, if you go to a coffee shop and you ask, can I get this coffee for free? You'll be surprised how many different schemes there are where bartenders are actually allowed to give a certain amount of coffees for free in order to make the coffee shop seem nicer, and, and etc. And how many times they will actually say, yeah, I can give you this coffee for free. So this idea where your goal is to collect no's will actually get you a lot more yeses in a way that's a lot less frustrating than if you're trying to just get yeses.
I'm so competitive that when I get a no that I actually cared about, I get very, very sad and very depressed and cry myself to sleep. But then I wake up the next day at like 4 a.m. and I'm plotting my revenge by how can I get better and how can I do better and how can I make it better. And so that kind of drive really pushes me. And actually, I got one of the sweetest rejection letters I've ever had in my life a couple of days ago. And I didn't tell you, but I was going to print it out and frame it and maybe write some notes on it, because it pissed me off so much. But after that anger subsides, I just get so driven. I just want to do better and get it. Yeah. And it's funny because like every time we celebrate a win, it's because of shit we did 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years ago. So it's really interesting. There's such a lag between the accomplishment and being recognized for the accomplishment. There's such a big lag in movies. You got to have that long-term time frame mindset. We work in 3-4 year cycles. It takes us 3-4 years to make a movie, and there's overlap. But it's such a marathon that you got to stay mentally strong.
Yeah. In the last 8 years of running CineCircle, I'm only now starting to realize that something that I did in 2019 is the reason why I can do something right now. Where I realized, oh my God, thank God I helped this person with something because now they can help me. Or thank God I run that particular event because now this is happening. Or thank God I started that newsletter back then because now it's really paying off.
Right. So, and it goes back to the contacts as well in the industry. It's such a kind of long tail process. These things just kind of evolve.
Yeah. I speak to a lot of producers and I interview a lot of producers here in my podcast where I ask them, how did you find your private investors for this film that you did last year? And the majority of the time it starts with, well, I met this guy 20 years ago at this wedding, and then and so on. So there is a pretty long time horizon for this.
That's why it's so important to be, it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice.
Yes. And on that note, I have another concept that I wanted to share, a bit of experience. So again, 8 or 9 years ago, I ran this crowdfunding campaign where we were raising $40,000 for a short film. And we managed to raise that. But through that process, I've learned, I started off very greedy, just asking. And then I learned that one of the best ways to find supporters for your crowdfunding campaign is to just do nice things and do favors for other people, and they will reciprocate. And I've, after I finished that crowdfunding campaign, I've realized that I've just continued doing that. And I make sure that every single week, I help a couple of people with something, whether it's someone that was running a crowdfunding campaign and I just supported with, $10 or $20, someone that's currently promoting their film and I share it on our stories and our LinkedIn. And every single time I do that, I just add those names to a spreadsheet. And these are not necessarily to do something with specifically and not in just such a super transactional way, but just to almost build up this list, because you can look at that list at some point in the future and go, okay, I helped all of these people. What can they help me with perhaps at some point in the future? And if you do that, they will reciprocate and nice things will happen back to you. So you guys so far have released the film on Vimeo. Now you sort of did it with essentially PVOD. It's currently you can rent the film for $10, you can buy it for $20, which is pretty high amount for films, because obviously you start off with the highest amount because you can't ever go higher. So so you start off with a higher one and you go you go lower as the film goes on. Now, for the majority of indie filmmakers who self-distribute their film on Vimeo with a price tag of $20, they will get 0 sales, unless it's a crew member or a mom or a boyfriend somewhere who will buy that film. But you guys have managed to get hundreds of sales from Vimeo by itself, which is incredible. And so far, we've spoken about building the community and so on. Are there any other, tips and marketing strategies that you guys, would like to share that you think helped you build a community that was just so strong that people are willing to pay $20 for that film, probably knowing as well that in a couple of weeks or months it might be significantly less?
Yeah, I think building up the anticipation, building up the excitement, marketing it from day one, having access to that grassroots community, staying consistent. Frequency is a big part of social media. So, hats off to my business partner here, because he manages to stay tenacious and consistent with that, which I wouldn't be able to do. And then just, having any industry, as you go up any industry, it gets smaller and smaller towards the top, right? So all the people in our film, even though they're scattered around the world, they all know each other. Like everyone at the top of this industry knows each other. So it was, because it was so specific and the high end of that industry, it was just easy for the word to spread like wildfire. And then the premiere took it over the top. And
we were the first to market with this film of something of pent up demand for within our audience.
Yeah. And then, like I keep telling people, when was the last time you bought a movie from a website that sells one movie? It's rare. So the fact that we do have a lot of sales is really exciting. And now we're using Film Hub to reach a broader audience because our sales have started to slow down, which tells us of that grassroots top end of the market, we're running out of people to sell it to. So now we've got to reach a wider audience, but that goodwill that we've built with the first initial audience has been crucial because, for example, we have 50-star ratings on IMDb, and every written review is a 10 out of 10 for the movie. So that is just going to help expedite our move on to Amazon because they own IMDb. And then through Film Hub, we'll do a slow rollout over the coming months in different platforms, different countries. And because we all know that the Amazon algorithm is strong in the first 30 days, we want to stimulate that algorithm by encouraging everyone here to go and rent and watch it on Amazon when it comes out. But also, we're doing around the early December, we're going to do an official unofficial world record attempt at the largest bartender online watch party ever. So we're just going to try and get like hundreds of bartenders around the world to all purchase it from Amazon at the same time and watch it and create this unofficial world record.
That's awesome. And so just to break that down a little bit, for anyone who doesn't know, Film Hub is essentially an online aggregator. You can put your short film or your feature film on Film Hub. That is free. And then Film Hub will pitch your film to various streaming platforms such as Amazon, Tubi, the Roku channel, etc. Once your film gets onto those platforms then pay Film Hub. Film Hub takes a 20% cut, and then you get the rest of the money. So essentially, there is no upfront cost. And Film Hub facilitates what before could not have been done, and you had to go for a distributor. And that's why Film Hub is great for anyone looking to self-distribute their films.
Also, we did just regular distribution on our first movie, self-distribution on our second, but our next movie is going to be regular distribution as well. And because they're three different shaped boxes of movies, they're three different marketing strategies, budget levels. In fact, our next movie is like a nearly $3 million movie. So it's a completely, entirely different business model. And even how we, even the mechanisms of how we greenlit ourselves are different.
Yeah. And what I also love about you guys is you have this mindset of creating stories for the press, which I love, because I think, getting articles and getting the press to write about your film is really, really important. If you get, a couple of articles in some bigger publications, that can really skyrocket the number of views and the number of revenue that your film generates online. And you guys, with your premiere event, with the fact that in general you're creating the first ever documentary film about flair bartendering, that even when most people would just create a watch party, you're creating the unofficial world record of the most bartenders, watching a film at a watch party. All of those different things are press release headlines to get to get your the word out there, which is
really lucky. We've had like about 4 or 5 TV appearances, 20, 30 articles, so and again, it's the headline, right? It's not like Las Vegas filmmakers release second movie, big whoop, right? Big whoop. It's the world's first ever documentary about this underground world, right?
Yep.
So because it's a first, that's the headline, and that's the end for creating the press.
And also because our featured cast, our bartenders come from all over the U.S. and the world. We have different press releases aimed at the media in their areas. Hometown girl makes good in a movie. Hometown boy makes good in this movie. For each of the specific areas that our cast is from, which we're really going to promote once we get our Amazon release.
Right. So we targeted our marketing by we didn't have a one size fits all marketing plan. It's like who are we talking to, and let's tailor the pitch to them, which all takes a ridiculous amount of work. I know you're all thinking like, how do we do that? It's so much work. Well, that's why I have a business partner, because I couldn't do it alone.
Yeah, I mean that's really great advice there. And in general, a story that I've heard from another filmmaker whose next film I'm actually exec producing at the moment, I love, which is he created this film, this documentary film about UFOs called The King of UFOs. And it was a low budget documentary about UFOs. He then self-distributed it through Film Hub and so on. But his film was generating a lot of revenue. And I was wondering, what was the main reason for that? And he said, we just, there was articles written about us in all the really, really big press outlets, like, the massive, like, national kind of publications. And I said, oh, about what? He's like, well, in the documentary, there is one person from Canada who basically claims that he saw King Charles in a UFO. And obviously, every single tabloid, especially in the UK, but also in the US, King Charles spotted in a UFO, claims in this documentary. They all wanted to write about it because it was a headline. It was something that's incredible. So for everyone who was listening, who's thinking, oh, you know what, I want to create a film that's marketable, but I don't want to do a horror. I don't want to do a sci-fi. I actually want to do a drama. I want to do a film that inherently is not marketable. Think of ways that you can create the film either in a way or add something to the film that will generate press headlines. We are all a part of this distribution mastermind where we meet up on a monthly basis, and one of the producers there is creating. He has just shot a film in 5 days, and his big press headline was, "This has been a film that's been 3 years in the making that was shot in 5 days." And that's something that a lot of people, that draws their interest. Well, how did he manage to shoot this entire feature film with this massive cast in 5 days? And that's probably going to get him quite a lot of press further down the line. So have a think about what you can add to the way that you make the film or to the film itself that will generate those press headlines. That will be massively, massively useful.
I will say this, here's an interesting concept that I want to speak about real quick, and that's the idea that $1 of marketing can buy you more before you make a movie than after you've made a movie. And that sounds really abstract, and let me explain a little. So I'll jump forward a little. Our next movie is a horror. It's a $3 million horror, loosely based on a 5,000-year-old Japanese folktale. And what we did, because we've been preaching this, how do we connect with an audience? It's so important because the film industry has this broken model where everyone gets together and they bake this beautiful pizza and it's piping hot. And then they're like, does anyone want a piping hot pizza? And it's hard to get rid of because maybe people don't want a piping hot pizza at that time. So we really want to try and reverse engineer it. So what we did with our next movie is we created a Facebook page for the movie, for Scissormouth. And we put the key art, the poster, and the log line on there, and nothing else, right? Then we targeted men and women using Meta's, targeting tools. We targeted men and women over the age of 18 who live in America, that speak English, who are fans of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Blumhouse movies. Okay, that was how specific we were. And then we put some money into it. And this kind of marketing validation campaign, anything under 50 cents cost per like is considered pretty good. 13 cents cost per like is like the holy grail. We got 10 cents cost per like, which means overnight we put $300 into the Facebook machine. And from our target demographic, we got 3,000 followers overnight, just with the logline and the key art. So what this tells us is that right now, to all those people, the movie only exists in their mind, right? It exists in their imagination based on the logline and the key art, and that's it. And so it can be whatever excites them, right? But after you've made a movie, it's a known quantity. We know if it's great, not so great, medium, bad, right? It's a known thing, right? So your dollar of marketing can only represent what that known quantity is. Whereas before you make the movie exists in people's imagination, and that's a lot more powerful. So you can actually, $1 will get you more leverage before a movie's made than after a movie's made. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah, no, and I think that's really, really brilliant advice. For everyone watching, by the way, please feel free to ask any questions you might have in the chat. We're coming up to the end now, so if you have any other questions, please let us know. And actually, Sahar's got a question on essentially how can filmmakers find good producers, I believe really is the question. So if you're a director and you're looking for a good producer, or you're a screenwriter and you're looking for a good producer who can bring your film to life, or your screenplay to the screen, how can you find these people and how can you motivate them to work with you and on your projects?
I think start with proximity. I think maybe a mistake a lot of people do is they maybe they're in England, they reach out to a producer in LA, can you produce my movie? That's not going to happen. You got to start with your, inner circle and like, who are your film school friends? And if you didn't go to film school, go to the local film school and say like, who's like learning and wants to do stuff, and because they have to do stuff for school projects, so they're making stuff for free. So there's a resource right there. But also your local community theater group or whatever, start small and grow out rather than trying to do it the other way around, and you'll find the right people.
Interesting. Great advice. Well, listen, thank you so much for coming on and for sharing all of this information. I really believe that you guys are just really, really incredible at indie film marketing, and you've got that great mindset. So thank you so much for sharing all of this advice with everybody listening. And for everyone who's watching right now, first and foremost, if anyone is now interested, I'm sure some of you are, to watch this first ever documentary film about flair bartendering, you can do so now on shakenandstirred.com, or you can scan this QR code. I'm going to also put the link to the movie here in the chat, so you guys will be able to see it there. As all of you are interested in film marketing, we also wanted to give an additional piece of value to everyone who supports Patrick and Deborah and their film and rents or buys it. And that's, we want to offer you guys this free marketing pack, which includes over 200 journalists, including their names, email addresses, and the film publications that they work from, as well as over 400 professional film reviewers. So those are two elements that can really help you massively in promoting your feature film.
That's good. We want this.
Yeah, we want this.
I think you guys will be able to get it. So you can download this marketing pack by scanning this QR code below. I will also put a link to that in the chat. Now, there's one little twist. This document is password protected. And the password is the last word in the rolling credits of the Shaken and Stirred movie. So if you want to access that pack, you can rent the film, enjoy it, watch the film, and also get that last word, which is the password, which is just an additional, incentive. You will get this this whole marketing pack.
So I hope we just got it.
We just got it, and we can't wait to read it. We're gonna read it right after this.
Oh, great! I guess you guys know what that last word is on the rolling credits. So fantastic.
You can see how on it we are as a filmmaking team. Like anything we jump on straight away, and I think that's the key. Just always be proactive. Shoot for the moon. If you miss, at least you'll be among the stars.
Yeah. Okay, guys. And aside from that, how can filmmakers connect with you guys? If they like the sound of everything that you're doing at the moment, perhaps you want to work with you in the future or want to connect in some other capacity.
Pat can talk about our 1905 stuff. It's very easy to connect with me. I'm very Googleable. Just put in my name into the Google thing, Deborah Richards, and either my social media, my Instagram will pop up, or my website will pop up, and you can shoot me a message on Instagram or on my website. I'm very chatty, but we have a bunch of socials.
If you email us at contact@1905films.com, one word. I always read the emails every day, or patrick@1905films.com.
Isn't there a contact form on our website, 1905films.com?
There's a contact form there too.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you go to our website, 1905films.com, there's a contact form there also.
And if you're wondering why 1905, it was the year Vegas was founded.
Yeah, Vegas is right outside there.
Great. Well, once again, thank you so much. Yeah, this has been incredibly insightful and I'm sure very useful to everyone listening. So once again, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, ZB. It's been amazing. And thank you for everyone for listening. Quick shout out to Alan. He says he made a Flare documentary once video, and just a coincidence. So amazing. The world of Flare is out there. So thank you guys. And please go ahead and watch the movie. It's a fun movie. Support indie film, and thank you, ZB and CineCircle. You guys are amazing. What you do.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, guys. And one final word for everyone who got here to the end. If you are looking to self-distribute your film, if you're looking at self-distributing your film through a platform such as FilmHub, if you're a little bit stuck and you don't quite know how to self-distribute a film, or perhaps you don't know how you're going to be able to self-distribute it and market and promote it in a way that's actually going to get your film to profitability, that's going to generate enough sales for you so that you can cover the budget of the film, and you feel like you need a little bit of extra help, that's something that we currently do at CineCircle. And we help filmmakers who are looking to self-distribute their film with one-to-one coaching. So if you are interested in, some help in finding exactly how to connect with your audience, how to self-distribute your film without the need of distributors and gatekeepers, and how to actually market it effectively, feel free to schedule a free consultation call with us, where we can learn a little bit more about your project, learn a bit more about your film, tell you a little bit more about what we do, and see if this could be a good fit. So if you are interested in that, please feel free to scan this QR code. I'm going to put a link here in the chat as well. This is a no obligation consultation call. We do not try to sell you anything on that call, directly on the call. It's just a 30-minute call to get to know you, get to know your project, and see if you'd be a good fit for our coaching program. But aside from that, I just want to thank you all once again for sticking around till the end, for listening, and for joining us today. I do hope that you found this useful. If you did, this live stream is going to now stay available publicly on our YouTube channel on this same exact link. So if you know anybody who you think this talk would be interesting for, please feel free to share this link that you're on right now, this YouTube link, and they will be able to watch the replay, which will be on our channel, for forever. So once again, thank you guys so much. I hope that you have a great rest of your day or evening, depending on where you are, and hope that we see you at another CineCircle event.